The moment my mother told me I wasn't invited to our family's annual vacation because I was too difficult and would ruin everyone's mood was the same moment I realized they had no idea they'd just booked their dream getaway at a resort I'd owned for the past 3 years. But watching them post photos on social media from Paradise Bay Resort while simultaneously calling me a disappointment was about to become the most expensive mistake of their lives. Before we dive into this story, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy stories about karma served ice cold with a side of poetic justice. Where are you watching from? Drop your location and local time in the comments below. If you've ever been excluded by your own family only to discover you held all the power, this one's going to be absolutely satisfying. My name is Monica, and I'm 31 years old. What happened during my family's perfect vacation last month is still causing ripple effects that have completely restructured our family dynamics. Picture this: my parents, my brother Blake, and his wife Courtney enjoying 5-star luxury at Paradise Bay Resort in the Maldives, posting Instagram stories about their blessed family time while I sat in my penthouse office in Manhattan, watching their every move through the resort's security cameras. You see, they had no idea that their disappointing daughter Monica, the one they'd just excluded from their annual family bonding trip, was actually the silent owner of the very resort where they were celebrating being rid of me. Let me take you back to the beginning, so you can understand how 31 years of being the family scapegoat led to the most satisfying week of revenge I've ever orchestrated. Growing up in the Chin family meant learning very early that I would always be second best to my brother Blake. 2 years older, Blake was everything our traditional Chinese-American parents wanted in a son. Tall, charming, went to Harvard for pre-med, married his college sweetheart Courtney right after graduation. He was the golden child who could do no wrong, while I was the disappointment who insisted on doing everything the hard way. "Monica, why can't you be more like Blake?" became the soundtrack of my childhood. While Blake played varsity tennis and dated cheerleaders, I was in my room coding websites and building computers from spare parts. While Blake was getting accepted to Ivy League schools, I was starting my first tech company at 17 with money I'd made from freelance programming. By the time Blake was finishing medical school, I'd already sold 2 companies and was well on my way to building what would become a tech empire. But at family dinners, the conversation always centered on Blake's achievements, his relationship with Courtney, their plans for the future. "Monica makes good money with her computer stuff," Mom would tell relatives, as if my success was some kind of quirky hobby rather than a multi-million-dollar enterprise. "But Blake is going to be a surgeon. He's going to save lives." The implication was clear: Blake's work mattered. Mine was just playing with technology. Our annual family vacation tradition started when Blake graduated medical school 5 years ago. Every summer, the 4 of us, sometimes 5 when Courtney joined, would take a luxurious international trip together. Mom called it family bonding time, though it usually felt more like a week-long celebration of Blake's latest achievements while I served as the family photographer and trip organizer. I always paid for these trips. Not that anyone acknowledged it. I'd quietly transfer funds to Dad's account, and he'd make the bookings as if he was treating everyone. The fiction that Dad was providing these expensive vacations was important to maintain his image as the family patriarch, even though his accounting firm couldn't afford the 5-star resorts we stayed at. Last year's trip to Santorini had been particularly painful. Blake had just finished his surgical residency and gotten engaged to Courtney. The entire week was essentially an engagement celebration disguised as a family vacation. I spent 7 days watching my parents fawn over the happy couple while treating me like hired help. "Monica, can you take our photo here? Monica, can you figure out the Wi-Fi? Monica, can you handle the dinner reservations? Never Monica, what do you think about this restaurant?" Or "Monica, what would you like to do today?" Just endless requests for service while they celebrated Blake and Courtney's perfect life. The worst part was the constant commentary about my single status. At 31, my unmarried state was apparently a source of great concern and frequent discussion. "Monica works too much," Mom would explain to strangers we met. "She's so focused on her career, she doesn't make time for relationships." Not like Blake and Courtney, they understand balance. Balance. As if building a technology empire while they lived off my anonymous generosity showed a lack of balance. What they didn't know, what they'd never bothered to ask about, was that over the past 3 years, I'd been quietly acquiring luxury resort properties around the world. Paradise Bay Resort in the Maldives was my crown jewel, a $200 million property I'd purchased through a shell corporation after falling in love with it during a solo business trip. The resort was everything I'd dreamed of: overwater bungalows, world-class spa, Michelin-starred restaurants, and the kind of service that made guests feel like royalty. I'd poured another $50 million into renovations and upgrades, turning it into one of the most exclusive destinations in the Indian Ocean. But to my family, I was just Monica with her computer stuff, too antisocial to appreciate real luxury, too difficult to include in their perfect family dynamics. The conversation that changed everything happened 6 weeks ago during our regular Sunday family dinner at my parents' house in Westchester. Blake and Courtney had just returned from their honeymoon in Japan, and the entire meal was devoted to their travel stories and photos. "The service was incredible," Courtney gushed, showing us pictures on her phone. "I felt like a princess the entire time. Blake spoils me so much." Blake beamed with pride. "Only the best for my wife. We're already planning our next trip. Maybe the Maldives for our first anniversary." "The Maldives sounds divine," Mom said, her eyes lighting up. "You know, Dad and I have been talking about taking another family vacation this summer. It's been too long since we all traveled together." "What about Paradise Bay Resort?" Courtney suggested, scrolling through her phone. "I've been following them on Instagram, it looks absolutely stunning. Like, once-in-a-lifetime amazing." My heart stopped. They were talking about my resort. "Let me see," Dad said, taking Courtney's phone to examine the photos. "This looks incredible. Very upscale. Probably expensive, though." "Don't worry about the cost, Dad," Blake said magnanimously. "Courtney and I can help contribute. We want the whole family to experience something special together." The whole family. I waited for someone to ask what I thought about the Maldives, or when I might be free to travel, or if Paradise Bay looked good to me too. Instead, Mom started planning immediately. "We should book soon if we want the overwater bungalows. Blake, can you handle the reservations? You're so good at this kind of thing." "Actually," I said, finally finding my voice, "I know Paradise Bay pretty well." "I could help with." "That's okay, Monica," Blake interrupted. "I've got it covered. Besides, I know what kind of accommodations Courtney likes, and Mom and Dad have their preferences too." The dismissal was casual but complete. My opinion on the resort I literally owned wasn't needed or wanted. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched them plan the trip in our family group chat. Blake had indeed booked Paradise Bay Resort for a full week in July, the most expensive time of year. 3 overwater bungalows, spa packages, private dining experiences, everything my resort had to offer. The total cost was over $45,000 for the week. I waited for the conversation about when I could take time off work, or which bungalow I'd be staying in, or what activities I might enjoy. The conversation never came. Instead, I got a call from Blake 3 weeks before the trip. "Hey Monica, so about the Maldives vacation?" "Yeah, I've been watching the group chat. It looks amazing. I can't wait." Silence on the other end. "Actually, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Courtney and I have been discussing it, and we think this trip should just be the four of us. You know, the original family. The original family. As if I wasn't part of it. What do you mean, Blake? I mean Mom, Dad, Courtney, and me. We think it would be better for family bonding if it was a smaller group. More intimate. But I'm family too. Of course you are. But Monica, let's be honest, you haven't seemed very happy during our family trips lately. You always seem stressed, or you're working on your laptop, or you're just not really present. We thought you might actually prefer to skip this one. My chest tightened. You thought I'd prefer to be excluded from the family vacation? Not excluded. Just given a break from family obligations. You're always so busy with work, and this trip is really about relaxation and connecting with each other. We didn't want you to feel pressured to take time off when you're probably happier focusing on your projects. The gaslighting was masterful. They were excluding me but framing it as doing me a favor. Did Mom and Dad agree to this? It was actually Mom's idea. She said you've seemed distant lately, and she thought some space might be good for everyone. I closed my eyes, feeling 31 years of being the family outsider crash over me like a wave. I see. Don't be upset, Monica. We can plan a different trip later in the year. Just the two of us, or maybe a weekend somewhere. This particular trip just works better with 4 people. After I hung up, I sat in my office for an hour, staring out at the Manhattan skyline. My family was taking their dream vacation to my resort, and they'd specifically excluded me because my presence would supposedly ruin their bonding experience. The irony was almost poetic. That evening, I called my resort manager, Lucas, at Paradise Bay. Monica. Good to hear from you. How are things in New York? Complicated. Lucas, I need to ask you about a booking that's coming up in July. The Chin family reservation. Ah yes, I remember that one. 3 overwater bungalows for a week. Very high-end package. Why do you ask? That's my family. Your family? The ones who? Lucas trailed off. He knew enough about my family dynamics to understand the significance. The ones who think I'm a disappointment with a computer hobby, yes. They're coming to Paradise Bay to celebrate being rid of me for a week. Monica, I'm so sorry. What do you want me to do? For now, nothing. Let them arrive, let them check in, let them think they're having the perfect family bonding experience. But Lucas, I want you to document everything. Every request, every complaint, every interaction. And if they say anything about their absent daughter Monica, I want to know about it. Of course. Anything else? Just be ready. I have a feeling this is going to be an interesting week. The next 3 weeks passed slowly. I threw myself into work, expanding my other business ventures, closing deals that would net millions. But part of my mind was always on Paradise Bay, imagining my family settling into the luxury I'd created while celebrating my absence. The day they left for the Maldives, I got a group text, off to paradise. Can't wait for some quality family time. Love you all, with a photo of Blake, Courtney, and my parents at JFK Airport. Notice how the message said love you all but was sent to a group that included me, the person they'd specifically excluded from their paradise. For the first 2 days of their trip, I watched their social media posts with a mixture of anger and sadness. Photos of crystal clear water, gourmet meals, spa treatments, sunset dinners. Every post tagged Paradise Bay Resort, every caption talking about how blessed they were to experience such luxury as a family. Perfect family getaway. Mom posted with a photo of the 4 of them at dinner. So grateful for these precious moments with my loved ones. Blake's Instagram story showed him and Courtney in their overwater bungalow, living our best life with the best family. Some things are worth every penny. Dad posted a rare Facebook update. Sometimes you have to invest in experiences with the people who matter most. Paradise Bay Resort is treating the Chin family like royalty. Every post was a reminder that they were happier without me, that their perfect family vacation was only possible because I wasn't there to ruin it with my difficult personality. But on day 3, Lucas called me with an update that made me smile for the first time since they'd left. "Monica, your family is interesting." "What do you mean?" "Well, your brother Blake seems to think he's the most important guest we've ever had. He's been demanding upgrades, complaining about service times, and generally treating the staff like servants. Yesterday he yelled at one of our housekeepers because his towels weren't folded the way he liked." "And my parents?" "Your mother has sent back 3 different meals because they weren't authentic enough. She keeps saying that for what they're paying, everything should be perfect. Your father has been complaining about the Wi-Fi speed in their bungalow and demanding we upgrade their internet package for free." "And Courtney?" "She's actually been relatively pleasant, but she keeps posting negative reviews on TripAdvisor about minor issues. Things like the water pressure in the shower being too strong, or the air conditioning being too cold. Nothing major, but she's clearly trying to get compensation or freebies." I felt a familiar knot in my stomach. This was exactly how they acted on every family trip, entitled, demanding, never satisfied. I'd always been the one smoothing things over, apologizing to hotel staff, handling their complaints diplomatically. Without me there to manage their behavior, they were showing their true colors. "Lucas, are you dealing with this okay?" "Oh, we're fine. We've handled difficult guests before." "But Monica, there's something else. They've been talking about you." My pulse quickened. "What are they saying?" "Nothing good. Your brother told our concierge that the family vacation was so much more peaceful without their difficult sister there. Your mother mentioned to the spa staff that she had a daughter who was too focused on work to appreciate experiences like this. They seemed to think excluding you was the right decision." The words hit like physical blows, but they also crystallized something inside me. They weren't just happy I wasn't there, they were actively celebrating my absence and using it to bond with strangers over how much better their lives were without me. "Lucas, I think it's time for phase 2. What did you have in mind?" "Tomorrow is day 4 of their 7-day stay. I want you to casually mention to each of them that the resort owner is visiting the property this week. Don't make a big deal out of it, just let them know that if they have any feedback or special requests, the owner would be happy to hear from valued guests." "Okay, and then?" "Then we wait. My family has never met a successful person they didn't want to network with. Blake especially loves name-dropping about the important people he's met. They'll definitely want to meet the mysterious resort owner who's created their paradise." "Monica, are you sure about this?" "Lucas, they excluded me from this vacation because they thought I wasn't worthy of their perfect family bonding time. They're posting photos of my resort while simultaneously telling your staff how much better their lives are without me. I think it's time they learned exactly who's been making their perfect vacation possible." The next morning, Lucas texted me, "The bait is taken. Your brother Blake has already asked 3 different staff members about arranging a meeting with the owner. Your mother wants to express her gratitude for such a wonderful experience. They're all very excited about the possibility." That afternoon, I was on a private jet to the Maldives. The flight gave me 8 hours to think about what I was doing. Was this revenge? Justice? A teaching moment? Maybe all 3. But after 31 years of being treated like the family failure, after being excluded from a vacation at my own resort, after watching them celebrate my absence while enjoying my hospitality, I felt justified in showing them exactly who they'd been underestimating. I arrived at Paradise Bay just as the sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. The sight of my resort always took my breath away, the overwater bungalows stretching out into the crystal-clear lagoon, the pristine beaches, the lush tropical landscaping I'd spent millions perfecting. Lucas met me at the seaplane dock, grinning broadly. "Welcome home, boss. Are you ready for this?" "More ready than I've ever been for anything. Your family is currently at dinner at the Coral Restaurant. They've been asking about the owner meeting all day. I told them you'd be available tomorrow morning for a private breakfast meeting." "Perfect. And Lucas, make sure the meeting is in the owner's private dining pavilion, the one with the best view of their overwater bungalows." That night, I stayed in my private owner's suite, a luxurious space hidden away from guest areas that I'd designed as my personal retreat. I could see my family's bungalows from my balcony, their lights twinkling across the water like distant stars. Tomorrow morning, they would finally meet the mysterious resort owner who'd created their paradise. They just had no idea she was the daughter they'd deemed unworthy of joining them. I'll admit, I barely slept that night. Part of me was nervous about their reaction, but a bigger part was excited to finally show them who I really was, not the disappointing daughter with a computer hobby, but the successful businesswoman who'd built an empire they couldn't even imagine. The morning sun painted Paradise Bay in golden light as I prepared for what would be the most satisfying breakfast meeting of my life. I chose my outfit carefully, an elegant white sundress that conveyed both authority and tropical sophistication, paired with understated jewelry that screamed expensive without being flashy. At 9 a.m. sharp, Lucas escorted my family to the private dining pavilion. I watched them approach through the floor-to-ceiling windows, taking in their excited expressions as they marveled at the exclusive setting. Blake was dressed in resort casual attire, his hair perfectly styled, his smile ready to charm whoever had built this paradise. Courtney looked Instagram-ready in a flowing maxi dress, her phone already out to document this special moment. Mom and Dad were dressed in their vacation best, clearly thrilled at the opportunity to meet someone so successful. They had no idea that the successful person they were so eager to impress was the same person they'd excluded from their perfect family vacation. Lucas opened the door and gestured them inside. "The Chin family, as requested." I stood up from the dining table, turning to face them with a calm smile. "Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me." The recognition hit them in waves. Blake's confident smile faltered first, confusion flickering across his face. Courtney actually took a step backward, her phone slipping from her suddenly nerveless fingers. Mom's hand flew to her chest as if she couldn't catch her breath. Dad's mouth fell open, his eyes darting between me and Lucas as if trying to understand what he was seeing. "Monica?" Blake's voice came out as barely a whisper. "Hello, Blake." "Mom." "Dad." "Courtney." I gestured to the beautifully set table. "Please, sit down. I believe you wanted to meet the owner of Paradise Bay Resort." "This is impossible," Mom said, her voice shaky. "You can't be, this place costs millions. 200 million for the initial purchase, actually. Plus another 50 million in renovations and upgrades over the past 3 years." I took my seat at the head of the table, gesturing for them to join me. "But please, don't let my little computer hobby interrupt your breakfast. I understand you've been having a wonderful family bonding experience." The silence stretched out like a physical thing. None of them moved toward the table. "How?" Dad finally managed. "How is this possible?" "Well, Dad, it turns out my computer stuff was a bit more successful than you realized. I've been building a hospitality empire for the past few years. Paradise Bay is just one of 12 luxury resorts I own around the world." 12? Courtney whispered. 12. With 3 more in development. It's amazing what you can accomplish when you're too antisocial to have a real life, isn't it? I could see them processing this information, trying to reconcile their image of disappointing Monica with the woman sitting before them in a $200 million resort she owned. Monica, Blake said, finally finding his voice, we had no idea you were so successful. Because you never asked. In 31 years of family dinners, how many times have any of you asked for details about my work beyond whether I was still single? They exchanged glances, but no one answered. Please, sit, I said again, my voice carrying the authority I used in boardrooms. I have breakfast prepared, and I think we need to have a conversation. This time, they reluctantly took seats around the table. Lucas had arranged for a spectacular spread, tropical fruits, fresh pastries, gourmet coffee, everything Paradise Bay was known for. But no one seemed interested in eating. Monica, Mom began, her voice trembling slightly, why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you ever mention that you owned all this? When would I have mentioned it? Between Blake's engagement announcement and Courtney's career updates? During the discussions about my lack of relationships and social skills? Or maybe during the part where you decided I was too difficult to include in the family vacation to my own resort? The words hung in the air like an accusation. We didn't know, Dad said weakly. You didn't know because you didn't want to know. It was easier to see me as the family failure than to acknowledge that your disappointing daughter had built something extraordinary. Blake was staring at his hands, his usual confidence completely deflated. Monica, about excluding you from this trip. Oh, let's definitely talk about that. I leaned back in my chair, enjoying their discomfort. Blake, you told me this vacation would be better for family bonding if it was a smaller group. You said I seemed unhappy during family trips, that I was always working or not really present. You suggested I'd prefer to skip this one. We thought. You thought wrong. But I have to say, watching you all post about your perfect family time while you're literally vacationing at my resort has been quite enlightening. Courtney's face had gone pale. Monica, we're so sorry. We had no idea this was your place. Would it have mattered if you did know? Would you have suddenly found me worthy of inclusion in your family bonding if you'd known I owned the resort? No one answered, which was answer enough. I've been watching your social media posts, I continued. Very inspiring captions about being blessed, about quality family time, about experiencing luxury with the people who matter most. Tell me, how exactly does it feel to celebrate excluding your daughter while enjoying hospitality she created? Mom started crying. Actual tears streaming down her face. Monica, honey, we made a terrible mistake. Yes, you did. But not the mistake you think. I stood up and walked to the window overlooking their overwater bungalows. Your mistake wasn't excluding me from this vacation. Your mistake was 31 years of treating me like I wasn't good enough for your family while I quietly built an empire that dwarfs anything Blake will ever achieve. That's not fair, Blake protested, finally showing some fire. You can't compare our careers like that. You're right. It's not fair to compare a surgeon who saves lives to a tech entrepreneur who employs 15,000 people worldwide. But Blake, you've been comparing us my entire life, and somehow I always came up short despite out-earning you by several $1 million annually. The number hit him like a slap. Several million? My personal income last year was $18 million. The resorts alone generate about $40 million in annual revenue. My tech companies, well, let's just say I could buy and sell Dad's accounting firm 100 times over without noticing the expense. Dad winced at the casual mention of his business, which I knew was struggling financially despite their upper-middle-class lifestyle. But here's what's really interesting, I continued, returning to my seat. I've been tracking your behavior since you arrived at Paradise Bay. Blake, you've been incredibly rude to my staff. Yesterday you screamed at a housekeeper because your towels weren't folded properly. Blake's face reddened. The service standards here should be higher for what we're paying. What you're paying? Blake, this week is costing $45,000. Where exactly did you get $45,000 for a family vacation? The question hit the table like a bomb. Blake and Courtney exchanged panicked looks. We've been saving, Blake stammered. Really? Because I know exactly how much surgical residents make, and Courtney's teacher salary is a matter of public record. There's no way you two have $45,000 in vacation money. I turned to my parents. Mom, Dad, where did the money for this trip come from? Dad's face had gone ashen. Monica, we can explain. I'm sure you can. But first, let me guess. The money came from the mysterious benefactor who's been helping the family for years, didn't it? The anonymous donor who's covered everything from Blake's medical school loans to Mom's surgery to Dad's business expenses? The silence confirmed what I'd suspected. That anonymous benefactor was me. For the past 8 years, I've been quietly transferring money into various family accounts. Every time there was a crisis, every time Blake needed something, every time Dad's business had cash flow problems, I was the one fixing it. Mom's tears were flowing freely now. Monica, no. That's not possible. It's very possible. I have records of every transaction, every carefully timed deposit, every note that accompanied the money. The mysterious benefactor who's been blessing the Chen family with financial miracles? That was your disappointing daughter with her computer hobby. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, scrolling through years of transfers. Blake's medical school loans, $200,000. Mom's cancer treatment, $50,000. Dad's business bailout during COVID, $75,000. This vacation, $45,000. The grand total of my anonymous generosity to this family is just over $600,000. The numbers hung in the air like an indictment. $600,000 that I gave because I loved you, despite the fact that you treated me like I was less than Blake. $600,000 that allowed you to maintain your lifestyle while looking down on the daughter who was secretly funding it. Blake looked like he might be sick. Monica, we never asked you for money. No, but you sure were happy to take it when you thought it came from someone else. Someone worthy of your gratitude and speculation. But when it comes from me, suddenly it's different, isn't it? I stood up again, pacing to the window. Outside, Paradise Bay sparkled in the morning sun, perfect and serene. Inside this pavilion, my family was finally learning who they'd been dismissing for 31 years. Here's what's going to happen, I said, turning back to face them. You're going to finish your vacation here at Paradise Bay. You're going to enjoy every amenity, every meal, every sunset. And you're going to think about the fact that every moment of luxury you experience was created by the daughter you excluded from sharing it with you. Monica, please, Mom begged. We want to make this right. Do you? Because making this right means acknowledging 31 years of treating me like I was inferior to Blake. It means admitting that you excluded me from this vacation because you found my presence unpleasant, not because you thought I was too busy to enjoy it. We were wrong, Dad said quietly. We've been wrong about everything. Yes, you have. But being wrong and acknowledging you were wrong are two different things. I walked back to the table and sat down, my decision made. The anonymous donations stop now. All of them. Blake, you'll need to figure out how to fund your own lifestyle without mysterious benefactors. Mom and Dad's business will have to succeed or fail on its own merit. This vacation you're currently enjoying will be the last one funded by Monica, the disappointing daughter. You can't just cut us off, Blake protested. I can, and I am. For 8 years, I funded your lives while you treated me like I wasn't good enough to be part of your family. That ends today. But we're family, Mom sobbed. Family doesn't abandon family. You're right. Family doesn't abandon family. Family also doesn't exclude daughters from vacations because their presence might ruin the mood. Family doesn't celebrate being rid of one of their children. Family doesn't spend 8 years taking money from someone while treating them like a disappointment. I stood up one final time, smoothing my dress. Enjoy the rest of your stay at Paradise Bay Resort. The presidential suite spa package you booked for tomorrow? Complimentary. The private yacht excursion you wanted but couldn't afford? On the house. The farewell dinner at our Michelin-starred restaurant? My treat. Consider it a parting gift from the daughter you thought wasn't worthy of your perfect family vacation. Monica, wait, Blake called out as I headed for the door. I turned back to face them one last time. Blake, for 31 years, you've been the golden child while I was the disappointment. But here's what you never understood, I didn't need your approval to become successful. I didn't need Mom and Dad's validation to build an empire. I didn't need to be included in your perfect family to create something extraordinary. I paused at the door. But you needed my money to afford the lifestyle you've been living. And now you'll need to figure out how to maintain it without me. As I walked away from the pavilion, I could hear them talking frantically behind me, their voices rising in panic as the full implications of what I'd revealed began to sink in. Lucas was waiting for me outside. How did it go? Better than I could have imagined. Lucas, I want you to make sure they have everything they need for the rest of their stay. Treat them like the VIP guests they wanted to be when they thought they'd get to network with the mysterious resort owner. And after they leave? After they leave, Paradise Bay Resort goes back to being what it was always meant to be, a sanctuary where I don't have to pretend to be someone I'm not to earn my place at the table. The rest of their vacation unfolded exactly as I'd predicted. They tried calling me repeatedly, sending texts, leaving voicemails full of apologies and promises to do better. I ignored them all, focusing instead on running my resort and enjoying the peace that came from finally standing up to people who'd diminished me my entire life. From my private suite, I could see them attempting to enjoy their remaining days at Paradise Bay. But the joy had gone out of their vacation. Every amenity they used reminded them that it was created by the daughter they'd excluded. Every meal, every spa treatment, every sunset cocktail was a gift from the woman they'd treated as less than worthy of their company. Blake posted one more Instagram story before they left. Paradise Bay Resort is truly paradise, but some experiences make you realize what really matters in life. Family is everything, and we're grateful for every blessing, seen and unseen. Seen and unseen. I almost laughed at the irony. The day they left Paradise Bay, I watched their seaplane disappear into the distance from my private balcony. 8 years of funding their lives was over. 31 years of accepting their dismissal was finished. For the first time in my adult life, I was completely free from their expectations and their judgment. The fallout was immediate and predictable. Blake's medical practice, which had been supplemented by mysterious cash infusions during slow periods, suddenly found itself operating on actual revenue. Within 2 months, he had to move to a smaller office and let go of 2 staff members. Mom and Dad's lifestyle, which had been propped up by anonymous donations during Dad's business downturns, required immediate downsizing. They put their house on the market and moved into a smaller apartment. Courtney, who had grown accustomed to luxury vacations and designer clothes funded by money they didn't realize came from me, had to adjust to living on 2 teacher salaries. But the most significant change was in how they related to me. The first family dinner after the Maldives trip was awkward beyond description. They'd invited me out of desperation, needing to repair the relationship with their newly revealed benefactor. But the dynamic had shifted completely. For the first time in my life, they asked about my work. Really asked. They wanted to know about my companies, my properties, my achievements. They hung on my every word as I described the hotels I was developing, the tech innovations my companies were pioneering, the international expansion I was planning. "Monica," Dad said during that first dinner, "I had no idea you'd become so successful. We're so proud of you." "Are you proud of me, or proud of my bank account?" I asked quietly. The question silenced the table. "Both," Mom admitted after a long pause. "We're proud of what you've accomplished, but we're also grateful for everything you've done for this family. We just wish we'd known sooner." "You could have known sooner if you'd ever asked. But you were too busy celebrating Blake to notice what I was building." Blake, who had been unusually quiet throughout dinner, finally spoke up. "Monica, I owe you an apology. Not just for the vacation, but for everything. For 31 years of letting Mom and Dad treat you like you were less important than me. For taking credit for successes that you funded. For being the golden child while you were actually the one holding this family together." It was the first real acknowledgement I'd ever received from him. "Blake, I don't need you to take responsibility for Mom and Dad's choices. But I do need you to understand that excluding me from the family vacation wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of 3 decades of being treated like I didn't belong." "We understand that now," Mom said, tears in her eyes. "Monica, how do we fix this? How do we make up for 31 years of not seeing who you really are?" I considered the question seriously. "You start by treating me like an equal family member instead of a problem to be managed. You stop comparing my life to Blake's as if there's only one way to be successful. You acknowledge my achievements instead of dismissing them as luck or antisocial behavior." "And the money?" Dad asked quietly. "We know we have no right to expect anything from you after how we've treated you, but, Dad, stop. If you're asking whether I'll continue funding your lifestyle, the answer is no. If you're asking whether I'll help family members in genuine emergencies, we'll see. But the days of anonymous donations to maintain your standard of living are over." The relationship that emerged from that conversation was different from anything we'd had before. For the first time, I was seen as the successful daughter rather than the disappointing one. My opinions mattered. My achievements were celebrated. My absence from family gatherings was actually noticed and mourned. But it wasn't the same as having a family that had always valued me. There was a sadness in knowing that it took owning the resort they vacationed at for them to respect me. There was a hollowness in receiving praise that felt motivated by guilt and financial desperation rather than genuine pride. 6 months later, Blake called me with news that surprised me. "Monica, I've been thinking a lot about what happened in the Maldives, and I realized something. I want to earn back your respect, not because of what you can do for this family financially, but because you're my sister and I love you." "Okay. I've been looking into volunteer medical programs. There's an organization that provides surgical services in developing countries, and I've applied to spend 6 months in Cambodia. No pay, just helping people who can't afford medical care." I was genuinely surprised. "Blake, that's really admirable." I realized that I've spent my entire adult life being the golden child in a family where the real achiever was being ignored. I want to do something meaningful with the skills I have, something that matters beyond just making money or impressing people. "What does Courtney think about this?" "She's actually excited about it. We've both been doing some soul-searching since the Maldives, and we realized that our marriage had become about maintaining an image rather than building something real together. The idea of spending 6 months focusing on service instead of status appeals to both of us. It was the first conversation I'd had with Blake where he sounded like a real person rather than a performance of what he thought the golden child should be. "I'm proud of you, Blake." "Thank you." "And Monica? When I get back from Cambodia, I'd like to take you to dinner. Just the two of us. I want to hear about your life, your work, your dreams, not because of what you can do for the family, but because I've never actually gotten to know my sister." That dinner, when it happened 8 months later, was one of the best evenings I'd had with any family member in years. Blake came back from Cambodia changed, humbler, more thoughtful, genuinely interested in other people's lives instead of just talking about his own achievements. "You know what I realized while I was over there," he said over dessert. "I spent 30 years being jealous of your independence while simultaneously dismissing it. You built something extraordinary entirely on your own terms, and instead of being proud of you, I was threatened by your success." "Why were you threatened?" "Because deep down, I knew that you were more talented than me. You were building companies while I was still in school. You were making millions while I was following a traditional path that Mom and Dad approved of. It was easier to go along with their narrative that you were the problem than to admit that you were actually the most impressive person in our family." The acknowledgement meant more to me than any apology ever could. Today, almost a year after the Maldives revelation, my relationship with my family has stabilized into something healthier than it's ever been. We have monthly dinners where everyone's achievements are celebrated equally. Mom asks about my dating life without comparing me to Blake and Courtney. Dad seeks my advice on business decisions. Blake and I text regularly about everything from family gossip to international politics. But the most important change is that I no longer need their approval to feel successful. The woman who built Paradise Bay Resort doesn't require validation from people who couldn't see her worth for 31 years. My resort empire has expanded to 15 properties now, with 3 more in development. I'm dating a wonderful man named Victor, a marine biologist who loves that I'm successful and never asks me to dim my light to make him feel better about himself. I've found my chosen family among my business partners, my employees, and my friends, people who celebrate my achievements instead of treating them as character flaws. Paradise Bay Resort remains my favorite property, not just because it's beautiful, but because it's where I finally stood up to people who had diminished me my entire life. Every time I walk through those overwater bungalows, I remember the morning I revealed to my family exactly who they'd been underestimating. The guest book in the owner's suite contains an entry from that week that still makes me smile. "To the Chin family, thank you for showing us that family isn't about who shares your DNA, but about who sees your worth and celebrates your success. May your future vacations be filled with the kind of love and respect that everyone deserves." Paradise Bay Resort Management. I wrote that entry myself, the day after they left. It was my way of closing the chapter on being the family scapegoat and opening a new one where I am celebrated, not tolerated. If you've ever been the family member who gave more than they received, who achieved more than they were credited for, who built something extraordinary while being treated as ordinary, I see you. Your success doesn't require their recognition to be real. Your worth isn't determined by their willingness to acknowledge it. Sometimes the people who should celebrate you the most are the ones who diminish you the loudest. Sometimes the family that claims to love you is the family that can't see your value. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the courage to stop accepting less than you deserve, even from the people who share your DNA. The day I revealed I owned Paradise Bay Resort wasn't just about revenge. It was about finally showing up as my full, successful, accomplished self instead of the diminished version they were comfortable with. It was about refusing to shrink myself to fit their narrative about who I was supposed to be. Your story might be different, but the principle remains: you don't owe anyone your small self to make them feel better about their limitations. You don't have to hide your success to protect other people's egos. And you certainly don't have to accept exclusion from people who should be celebrating your inclusion. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't destroying someone's life, it's simply refusing to continue funding their delusions about your worth. Sometimes the greatest victory is showing people exactly who they've been underestimating all along. Have you ever been underestimated by the people closest to you? Share your story in the comments, I'd love to hear how you proved them wrong. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about choosing self-respect over family approval. Until next time, remember, your success doesn't need their permission to be extraordinary.